Hello, everybody. We are in week 7, and we're going to be covering chapter 4, which is consciousness. So we're kind of going out of sequence just to make sure that you're all aware of that. We did chapters 5 and 6, and now we're going back to 4. So I'm hoping that you are able to hear this entire podcast and hopefully pay attention to any differences this week, especially the extra credit opportunity, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But here is your to-do list for the week. I haven't yet put the videos on here that I'm referring to about consciousness, but I will add those on. You'll see them right down, probably right after the exam. But make sure you check and look at that. I just have to put them in tonight. So, in terms of the chapter content, we're going to be looking at the area of consciousness, what it means to be conscious, which, relates to our sleep-wake cycles. So we'll be talking a lot about sleep, the stages of sleep, as well as different levels of consciousness, because sometimes we're not necessarily asleep, but we're not fully awake either. And the brain is still picking up different stimuli from the environment during that time. So we'll be looking at some of the biological processes involved in sleep, stages of sleep, and then more interestingly, sleep disorders. And I think that's really where a lot of students find a lot of interest in talking about the various disorders and how they can affect people even in their conscious state or their wake state. We'll also be looking at some different theories as to why people dream. The court is sort of out on fully explaining dreams, dream analysis. There's still a lot that we don't know, so this is why we say theories of why people dream. Looking at how dreams differ depending upon gender and depending upon culture, how that can influence the content of our dreams. We'll be looking at the role of hypnosis in explaining an altered state of consciousness, which is what hypnosis is, and it's often used in treatment and therapy to achieve particular goals. So we'll be looking at some theories as to why hypnosis works and how it best works. We'll also be looking at another altered state of consciousness, which is meditation, explaining some of its benefits, particularly health-related benefits. We'll also look at psychoactive drugs. Now, this is typically something that's been discussed in the health chapter. In this new edition, it's been moved into the consciousness chapter, mainly because we're looking at a person's dependence upon drugs and what that does to a person, not just physically, but psychologically, and a lot of that has to do with altered states of consciousness. So we'll be looking at stimulants, depressants, hallucinogens, and how the dangers of those, I should say, and how those affect consciousness. And then we'll be concluding with kind of another popular favorite topic, which is how can our consciousness explain supernatural sorts of visitations. And so I'll let you kind of figure out what's meant by that. But this is just a really interesting chapter. I think it's one that gets a lot of discussion, and people love, because it deals with things that people still wonder a lot about. Whether you're a psychologist or not doesn't really matter. We all kind of are curious as to our dreams and their content and how to use that. So here are your lecture slides for the week and the chapter. As you can see, the discussion deals with not only chapter 4, but also Hawk Reading 2.2, where you'll be looking at dreams specifically, and different theories as to what purposes our dreams serve. So you'll sort of be comparing and contrasting two main theories of dreams, which deals with number 3 here. One is that are our dreams a way for unconscious thoughts to be played out. So things that we don't consciously think of, but are sort of underlying in the back of our mind, so to speak. Worries, anxieties, issues, problems that we might be having in conscious life then sort of get worked out or played out in unconscious life, sleep or dream life. And that's definitely one of the prevalent theories. That's one of the underpinning theories of Freud's work. He had a lot to say about the role and purpose of our dreams and sort of playing out those unconscious thoughts. The other sort of school of thought or theory is that our dreams are really a neurobiological process, that if you look at them at the neural level, we see that during sleep we have many random firings of our neurons during sleep, that our brain is actually really very active during sleep, not only in repairing and rebuilding itself, but in that just firing away. And some of those firings come from a place of stored memories and content that reflects on our day, our week, our life, the people in it. And so this is where we get kind of the hodgepodge of what our dreams can be. Dreams that don't make sense, dreams that have kind of segmented features, and don't necessarily have an underlying theme, although we like to try to point to themes. They don't always have one. So those are the two kind of main theories there, and you can see what the research has to say about both, and then you can say which one you think is more relevant based on the research. The other two questions in the discussion deal with sleepwalking. So in the Hawk reading, you're going to look at some of the research as to what happens when someone's sleepwalking, what state is their brain in, what does it do to the body. And once you have a kind of a solid understanding of that, I'm asking the question of, based on that research, based on what you know to be true of the sleep cycles and the wake cycles and sleepwalking, do you think that sleepwalking would be a valid defense for someone who commits a murder, say, when they're sleepwalking, or uses that as a defense or as an excuse for committing a murder? Or what other kinds of crimes do you think the research could or would support? And what kind of evidence would be necessary should a jury try to, look at the data and look at the evidence? How would we convince a jury a crime was committed while sleepwalking? What would that look like? What kind of information would we need? And so again, I just want to reiterate that this really needs to be based in the research, not what you think personally, although that's super interesting. I really want you to come at this from an experienced perspective and pretend like you're one of the lawyers on a case and you're trying to prove, guilty or not, something that was done under the guise of sleepwalking. What would be required for that? And what do we know about sleepwalking that would either validate that claim or not validate that claim of a crime being committed while sleepwalking? So a little interesting of a discussion post this week. I also really want to kind of, number one, caution, and number two, just make you all aware, when you're posting during the week, you have all week. You have until Thursday to post. Obviously, you're at an advantage if you post early because you haven't already seen other people's posts. What I'm noticing is that those who are posting later, it's very repetitive to what's already been said. And I'm going to get some of that just naturally, organically. You all are going to have some similar things to say. But I'm finding in the last 2 weeks of discussion that it's almost very similar when people are posting later to everything that's already been said. Like people having the same ideas. That I should not be seeing happening. You all have unique ideas about things that you would think are interesting. So, for example, if I'm asking you to design a study, like I have in previous weeks, pertaining to a topic, what would that study look like? When everyone starts proposing the same study, that's when, as a professor, I take alert. And I think something's gone awry because you all shouldn't have the same exact studies that you're coming up with on your own, independent of one another. So I just want to caution that you really do this discussion post and answer these questions before you've looked at anybody else's. You really shouldn't look at anybody else's posts when you go to write your answers, because that's just going to infiltrate your thoughts, and it's going to hinder maybe what you would say naturally, organically on your own. So keep that in mind as you're doing your original post for the week. And once you've posted by Thursday, you have until Saturday to then go and read other people's posts, see what they said, and comment on them. And as you're commenting on them, you are taking every opportunity to insert what you've learned, cite what you know, support with documentation from the readings, with concepts, with definitions, with terms. This is your chance to show me what you know. So if you're really looking for a 10 out of 10 on these posts, that's what I want to see happening. It should be definitely more developed. If it's only taking you 15 minutes to write your response and then respond to others, then that's a good indication that you're not spending enough time on this discussion. These are written, graded work, and so you definitely should be spending a good deal of time and thought and effort on these. So I hope that's super clear this week. You have a quiz on Chapter 4, and then you have your exam, which is going to go ahead and cover Chapters 4 and 6, so the memory chapter and then the consciousness chapter. So that exam, and then I've posted here another extra credit opportunity. Typically, extra credit is worth 2 points for each one. And I typically cap you out at 8 points. Okay, extra credit should be that, just a little extra. It shouldn't be like enough to supplement an entire assignment or quiz or grade. Although I cap you out at 8, so that's a potential of getting 8 extra credit points over the course of the semester. This one has to do with a research project that one of our psych students, Katie Chapman, is working on. She is in the honors program and is doing her honors thesis, and so she needs to collect data for that. So all the information is located here, including the Google sheets that she has here on how you can sign up for her studies. So if you're interested in doing that, please do. She will be keeping track of everybody that participates, and I will never see your answers to anything you participate in research-wise. I will just know that you did participate. So she has a way of tracking that that's confidential, and she will get me that information. But great opportunity. Definitely take advantage of that. Extra credit does come in handy. All right, so that wraps up the week. If you have questions or need any clarification or help on anything, please feel free to email me. Thanks, everyone, and have a great week.